Hello, a second. Yes, you can come in. I don't know. Anyone would think you were a demanding cleaner. You really are. You're just starting a live and you demand to come in instead of staying out with your sister because you want to come in and say hello to everyone. Next, you'll be jumping up on the chair, won't you? Knowing you. We're getting up, we're not getting up. We're moving the chair out the way. We're moving the chair out the way. Okay. Hello, everyone. Apologies for that, but a fluff who was supposed to be keeping company to but my sister is outside the house, outside while she was doing stuff in the garden, decided that he'd rather join me. Hello, everyone. So, let's see if I can pop it out. Let's see. Pop out, pop out, pop out. Chat. Hello, everyone. How are we all doing today? Today, of course, is Bruships 82. It's new books, fun books, and some random books. And I'm just going to stick this on my foot. So if at any point I go flying out the room, like this, you know why. It's because someone spotted a squirrel. Right. Hello, Peter Dawson. Hello, Carl Gasberg. Hello, Wazaski. Hello, John Shea. Frank Spardo. Hello, George Newman. Ooh, there is a website called Merlin Burrows that claims that they somehow discovered that the HMS Barham 5 years ago, the no pictures or sonar scans provided claim. What do you think? Show me the evidence. I have this conversation with people quite regularly. There was including a very nice, I say nice, a bit gentleman who got in contact with me about a paper I wrote on a journal, and in the paper I had said something about movements of ships. He came back and went, no, it was this, you've got it wrong. And I went, okay, fine, show me the evidence. Well, no, you have to go find the evidence. It's to do with this though, and you need to go look up this. And I went, well, that's A, several thousand quid, and B, you are claiming you know the evidence. You're claiming you show me that the evidence says this. Why don't you show it to me? Anyway, ended up with me not changing the article for some reason because the gentleman decided I was being rude because I said, show me the evidence. I need to have more than your word before I'm going to change an article. So I have the documentation in this is drawn from the National Archives in the UK, and it's the Royal Navy's official account of proceedings. Now, you're saying they're wrong. They might well be wrong. The Royal Navy is not perfect. It does not always get everything 100% right. There are sometimes things going to be which are wrong. And if they are wrong, that's fine. Tell me and I'll change them. But I need to have evidence before I can argue against the evidence which is in the National Archives. I need to have evidence of equivalent level that I can put up against it. I can't just do this because so-and-so says he's seen so-and-so documents and therefore claims from those documents that this is wrong. I can't do that. It's just not how academic history is written. When you read an academic history book, you know it is correct as far as the author is able to ascertain with sources to back it up. That is the criteria behind an academic history book. If you're reading a non-academic history book, or if you're reading one of those books which goes, aliens built the pyramids! They didn't. Because in the nicest way, if aliens built the pyramids, here's the question. Why did they build them there? Leaving that the place which is most difficult to get the stone they wanted to build. Not even a good point for launching spaceships either. The one side though. So yeah, if there's no pictures, no sonar scans provided back up the claim, I'd say great. If you are so sure you've got that is there, please go find something to go get us appropriate evidence and then show it to me, and then I'll agree with you. Hello, Sage. Carmen Gasberg, hello, M35 Benners, John Sykes, hello, hello, Ian Stradling, hello, Colin Cameron, hello, Bob Fry, hello, Jonathan Burrow, hello, DG40, hello, Knight Cleveland. Why you make a good argument about solving the constitute? Afraid there is still the brick, and E2 is still too big for the CVA one's lifts. So how do you solve the issue? And lack of appetite to buy foreign aircraft after the F4. Well, the F4 was actually quite a good aircraft and worked out pretty well. The British didn't have a lack of appetite to buy foreign aircraft after the F4. They got involved in Tornado and various other things. So I wouldn't say that. I'd say the problem with the E2 in terms of solving it is that you would need to either reshape the lifts or reshape the E2. And seeing as CVA1, if I remember correctly, has deck edge lifts, let me just check my plans of her, but let me just check. Well, that was helpful. Hey, you know, life happens. Yeah, she does have a deck edge lift. So if she has a deck edge lift, the aft one is deck edge. That might well be able to be big enough to transport an E2. It certainly could be modified to do. It would seem to be able to modifiable to do so. Twin catapults, forward lift, orientated around lifting up fighters. Aft lift could lift up an E2 quite easily because you probably do the E2 launch from the starboard side, because that would make sense, because that would be easier then to launch the E2. So yeah, the E2, you'd probably be using the aft lift. And you might well have to play around with that lift, but you could probably do it. I also have a feeling that, in my experience, that particular lovely backspace would not last for that long. I have a feeling it would get covered up very quickly and extended. Flight deck would grow. Flight deck would grow. Hello, Budguy229. Hello, Stafford. Hello, The Shrike. 616. Hello, Carmen Gasberg. Hello, Glenn Stewart. George Newman. Hello, everyone. The Shrike 676. Do your own wrong. So hot now, argument. So hot nowadays. I know, it's amazing. The idea is that you send an accusation at the way of an academic or someone and go, this is this, and then the academic goes, provide me with the evidence and I will agree with you. And you go, no, you go find the evidence. So you want me to prove your argument. That's not the way an academic argument works. I try and prove my side of the argument. You try and prove your side. Otherwise, it very quickly becomes you shouting hot air and expletives and me looking like a calm, reasoned person, which is, to be fair, my experience in academia, they're not really. I love them dearly. FRA powered Dr. Clarke. Yeah. On the other hand, the lift on the CVA1 is good enough for the AWACS version of the other Reaper Grey Eagle drone. There are options. Andrew Paul, hello. I think any saying scans Atra's Barham will be of what's left of her after she blew up. So really, she likely has to take the hood in pieces. Probably slightly more pieces than a hood is, actually. Considering hood seems to have, yeah. Thanks on Dr. C. The YouTube short you just made cuts off early. What was the last sentence? Cross. And I didn't think it shut. For some reason, it plays out full when I'm uploading it. In the version, so it goes across. And then in the version which goes on air, it loses the last word. I think I've got to time. I do keep time myself at 60 seconds. I think I have to time myself at 59. But it's kind of interesting because those shorts, I do one a week and it goes out on a Sunday morning. And they do pretty darn well. Really, Wayne? Knight 681. So how many UP41 class would the Italians have been planning to buy? That depends on who you want to talk to. Probably they'd have bought another 3. Because honestly, building them in batches of 3 makes sense for the Italians. But they are an interesting looking class to me. Certainly capable. What I find funny is basically most of these people and most of these nations are coming down to the idea of an all-forward main battery. But yeah, we're going to stick a 1 turret aft. We're going to stick 1 turret aft. We're going to stick 1 turret aft. And deal with all the complications that comes from that. And they could have just made their lives a lot easier by going all forward. Sage, are you the Glyn show the Sergeant Ship Mage books or just passing? No, yes, that is that Glyn. Glyn is very nice and comes to my videos. He's also, you will have seen him potentially in some of the Canada trip videos. He did wander around with us quite a lot in Canada. We did kind of abduct him from his writing for most of the trip while we were out there. Basically, it was a case of phoning him up and going, "Do you fancy tagging along? Yes, please." Oh, that was fun. We had fun. We're fairly certain, the Neo History Canada crew, that we were only allowed back into Canada after going across the Niagara Falls trip, route in and out of Canada to America. We were fairly sure we were only allowed back in because we had the Canadian with us. We were fairly sure the Canadians were going, "We're not sure about you, but you had one of us with you, so you're okay." Whereas the Americans were slightly worried when they saw 4 Brits and a Canadian coming across and discussing musketry as we came across. I think what Rolls-Royce power lines might have been used on the P139, assuming they get it to work. There's a variation on a few engines which might have been adapted. Honestly, it would probably be something which would be customized for it, but would be, to an extent, it would be based on one of the... Probably on one of the turbojets. Maybe not. Depends on what they're going for. If they're optimizing for cruising speed or top speed. Cameron, sorry to go off topic, but did you see the front page headline today saying the army is too small to fight Russia? My thought was the UK has never had an army big enough to do that. Pretty much that's what would have gone through my mind if I'd seen it. I've spent the day finishing off this. The shelving is now complete, and as you might notice, have now appeared. So all the way up there. So now I have all those levels of shelves to put in, and then at a certain point, I'll be putting in even more shelving down below. That's going to come from IKEA though, because it turns out don't really have enough wood or time to do it the other way. The HMS Hood Kobe set hasn't arrived yet, or I would be joking about how many pieces it was in. Oh, seriously, your collection of models is frankly amazing. How likely is the RM would end up with the Ferry Gannet AW7 once all other attempts fail? There's always that possibility, but I'm fairly sure they'd have come with an E2. There's viable, especially if they've got CVA one. It's very viable to go with an E2. And common sense about Academy Arms is overlooked way too often. Einstein said, "You need a single piece of evidence to disprove something, whilst no amount of evidence can prove something." Pretty much. Just for example, Dr. Clarke, that is how civilized debate should work. We lost that, or was it never? Yeah, never even there. To an extent, how do I put this? People care about evidence when they care about the topic. When they don't care about the topic, they care about showmanship. And trust me, I have had to do debating. I have had to use both. Andrew, Batch of the Free Video Thanks. They were building the Torres class in Batch of 2 and had 4 Francisco Clarke class planned. Why not go for 2 or 4 well, 4 ones? Because whilst they were building them in Batch of 2 for the Notorios, they really had only got 3 actually done. The 4th one is an interesting scenario. And pragmatically, 3 would have made far more sense. They'd probably end up trying for 4, but 3 would probably be better. 3 would probably actually be completed. Glenn, I did try to start the movies, but though I have my own footage of Little Rock's missile system. Yeah. Glenn, they all forgot to send paperwork for getting banned in Canada. Yeah, we filled out the forms to go in and out of Canada so many times, we didn't realise we had to fill them out every single time. We thought they covered us for the trip, not just, oh no, you have to fill out the forms again to come in again. And we're sort of going, do you realise how many of those forms there are? Seriously? You've managed to outform 4 British academics. Well, no, 3 academics and a medical doctor. Yeah. 20 minutes going through the Brits, however, followed by who's the Canadian? Okay, you. Okay, off you go. Yeah. It was fun. If the Italians wanted an 18-inch armed battleship, how big would it have to be to go the speed they would need? If you want it armored and you want it 18-inch guns and you want to go the speed you want to go, the Italians would want to go, you'd be looking at Yamamoto size. That's about where you're going to end up because that's about where you want to be. Potentially 9681, potentially. That's good. The Americans are worried the British decided that the experiment in 13 colonies was a failure and that the White House might burn down again. You know, with the British, we tend to take countries without even realizing it. Nicole Ross, IKEA Kallax. I don't think I'm going for the Kallax system. I think I am going for one of the IKEA systems, but not the Kallax one because the Kallax one is a bit too big. It's only 72 millimeters, 72 centimeters down there, so it's around 20 millimeters. It's not big enough, therefore, for the Kallax, which requires 770. Mainly because now the floor, as I've discussed with people, has risen by quite so much, and I have put in reinforcement under every single shelf system. Which is one of the reasons why I've run out of wood, because I've reinforced every layer of shelves. Which is why they're all now back to perfectly straight. They still probably start bowing. Now, was there a point around World War I where we had an army big enough to fight Russia, especially during the Revolution? But also not in a very long time. No. We didn't have a big army big enough to fight Russia. Honestly, you can have an army big enough to lock bits off Russia. That's one thing. Having an army big enough to actually fight and take Russia is a very big thing. If you have the advantage of interfering in a Russian civil war, you can do that, but that's a very different thing again. Have you seen the troll link I sent you on Facebook Messenger? Probably, but then I've been doing a lot of building, so I haven't done much. Danny Potts, when will the railway model be installed? Model railway be installed? That's going to require getting the track. So I've worked out the Cato track is roughly £400 worth of track. So that's down the list of procurement. And when I say down the list of procurement, thanks to various Kingston University, who I love dearly but have managed to muck up my pay, we'll leave that to one side. I love them. I'll get paid, and it'll all be sorted out. It will all be sorted out. It always does get sorted out. But thanks to various issues, my current let's put it this way: before I add on track, my Amazon shopping list, which is always a good track me, because what I do is I store the stuff in my Amazon basket, and then I go buy it when I finally have the money come in, or I buy it in sections. There are currently 40 items, not including track, because I haven't added that into this basket yet, in there. This covers the finishing off of the office in terms of the carpet, the build of the computer, some books, which I've got to procure. Is £2,700 sitting in the Amazon basket? That's just caused my sister, remember, my sister is just as half Scottish, half Cornish as I am, to collapse.
It would never be in my basket like
that. That is basically 3 months and 3 projects worth of stuff which has been left in there because of various reasons. So yeah, that's the entire stuff I need to buy for just these projects before I can get onto the track for the railway. So yeah, that's down the list. The railway's coming, but it's down the list.
What size do you track do you
need?
What size?
It's going to be N gauge. N gauge, and it's going to be Kato. Kato is the track manufacturers. They make track which already has its own ballast and comes ready ballast. So I don't have to do the ballasting like I did with the Pico N gauge, which I loved on my little model railway, but frankly drove me insane and meant I got ballast everywhere. So as much as I love the idea of fitting ballast, and you can do a really proper route, I'm not doing that again because it got little stones everywhere, and that is not fun when you start picking them out of books. And Space Marines. This is why you shouldn't get involved in the conversations. You have no idea what I'm talking about half the time.
Have you heard of a dust sheet?
I put down a dust sheet. The stones are tiny. They get everywhere. You have to remember the N gauge scale ballast. Do you imagine how small that is?
Yeah. But it doesn't need to get everywhere.
It gets everywhere. Trust me. It got everywhere. Everywhere. And you all watching that know what everywhere means.
Try grinding out some clay for a good half a
day. Okay, go away, you clay bobber. Geotechnical civil engineer. She literally spends half her life putting clay into pots and shaking a machine to see at what point it breaks down and has a landslide. You really want to see if you find that sort of thing fun, you would love a tour of her lab. Doctor's videos already exceed my actual ability to watch a video in a given week, so it's safe to assume that I haven't seen anything in video form. Oh, I'm sorry about that, but also rather glad of that. Ray Caracolos, remember the AZ's Monarch class was to be made 4 as of the Tegenerhoffs. Yeah, but I have more faith in the Austrians actually completing 4 than the Italians.
Orange paint remover.
Orange paint remover?
Yeah.
Why?
You haven't got it on the socks.
What do you know? I managed to get orange paint on my socks while painting in here. It takes skill. That does sound good, Tanef. Bruships on YouTube, lovely people in chat, and Lam Vindaloo. Yeah, you're having fun. Nice. How likely is the Brush E2 to Hawkeye Sidley HSN? If built, would have to be re-engined at some point. Oh, it would have been. Interesting. Canada immigration is still trying to figure out in or out. They think Drax permanently in. They felt that in the nicest way. They were half of them were sitting there going, "Are you sure you're British, not Canadian?" John Sykes, how's the roof of Bruships doing? I heard you finally got some rain there. You see, touch wood, all good. Touch wood, nothing's come in. I am getting some special silver roof paint for up there to paint the inside, etc., to protect the wood because they have done such damage to builders. Seriously, me and Drac had to do so much work up there, and even now going through it, this time I was going, oh, there's that. Oh, fridge, I didn't notice that, and I could tell I didn't notice it because I marked the previous ones. Glenn Stewart, put this down as potentially a Patreon question, but it might be quick enough to answer here. Why are modern warships still mostly sailing at 30 knots? Because it gets very expensive to go faster than 30 knots. Very, very expensive. It requires a lot of horsepower. And in order to make a 30 knot ship that's viable in terms of warship size, it's actually going to be bigger because, let's put it this way, there's an efficiency and a selling point. Engines take up a certain amount of space in the hull as a percentage of the hull. The more power you need, because of the higher speed you're going to operate at, the more hull space will theoretically be required for those engines. So therefore, the larger hull to justify, and the more weapon systems and everything else you get fitted in. Basically, if you were designing something which was going to be Kirov class, and I'm talking Project 1144 size Kirov, not the original Kirovs, maybe you would do that. Maybe. But it's very unlikely otherwise. Glacier, 30 knot plus knot ships were basically common for small ships, even battleships by the end of World War II, but nothing I see built lately seems that fast. It's literally because it's going to require more space of the hull, and they just don't want to pay the money. It would be sensible for them to be getting faster, but they're not doing that. Struggling. Hannah, what seems to be going on with YouTube mucking around with the history channels of late? Please see this week's bilge pumps with me and Drac. We did discuss it. So no, I found Mr. Deep in Germany. It's on Join, streaming service of German television companies. It's really cool, but the German voice actor who speaks to you in German is really bad. Probably trying to deal with my really bad English. So I've done 6K worth of things. Probably about £3,000 worth of stuff on Amazon for me. So yeah, that's probably about £6,000 for you. Probably current exchange rates. That's good. If you take a ratio of 1 to 10 soldiers to civilians in occupation, which is mostly urban and complement population in occupation, an army would need to be around 6.5 million to take Russia. Yep. Don't know for politics. I like that you're calling it procurement like it's been delayed by the Treasury. It has been delayed by the Treasury. They should be funding me. Probably. Dear guy. So everyone, Glenn, I would say warships are putting hydrodynamic limits since the 1930s. The power you need for higher speed increases on a very sharp curve. Yep. I was like, good to see there's some good Scottish morals left in the world. Yeah, let's put it this way. The only reason I'm not having a panic attack at that cost is I realise that that's the total amount. And I will buy that. Basically, what happens is this. My income comes in. I pay my bills. Then I take off money for credit card and for living expenses. And then the money I've got left is what goes towards me procuring things which I need to procure. So it's very much a case of bills first, done, debt's cleared, thank you, living costs, and then what's left after that goes on those things. The Space Marines raiding the railway in 40k battleships. To be fair, there is a plan that there could well be Space Marines on the railway at some point. But basically, it's going to be a case of once the railway's set up, you're never going to quite know what's going to be sitting on the railway at certain places. You're just going to have to keep an eye out for it. Like sand on the beach. Yep. The Shrek. And given the bilge pumps, it's mostly no-go. It's interesting history amount now. Dr. Luck, how much of a change did the Type 12I frigates and variants thereof represent for the and other navies operating from the 1960s going forward? They represented a lot of capability in terms of providing a very reliable asset. They weren't necessarily the best asset, they weren't necessarily the most upgradable asset, but they were capability, and they were able to be modified to fit each user's needs. Thank you, Stafford. Who doesn't engage? Is that 220 to 1? Roughly, I think. I'm going off the top of my head. I did put up a map. If you go to the section which is on here, the community section, I did put up the railway plan. There's a sort of the 3D image of the plan because I use AnyRail 6 to plan it out. This is another thing. It's AnyRail 6 is a great way of saving money. You can plot out your entire railway in 3D and then print off a list of the pieces you need. And if you're like me, you can either go shopping around eBay and Amazon to find those bits, or you can conceivably walk down to your local model railway shop and go, can you procure these? The trouble is, the model railway shops in my area are mostly extortionists. I say this in the nicest possible way, but they are. They know who they've got around them, they are prepared to charge them through the nose, and they don't change for the rest of other people like me who wander in, who go, well, that's not in my budget. For example, there is the fact that I know that if I was buying the Cato track from my local model railway shop, rather than from Amazon and eBay, it will cost me roughly 3 times as much. And there is no way I'm spending £1,200 on track. I'm trying to think. We need a YouTube channel for your sister, honestly. I keep telling her we need one for her. Hello, Nook. Andrew, considering 2 navies still operate variants of the Type 12I, Ecuador and Indonesia, longevity service, I'd say they're very good ships, but what was the irons been in? They're good ships, reliable, and neither will be fixed. Yes, I know, sis. I know. The ballast on your track is glued into place. The stuff I'm buying will be glued. The Cato track, it's glued in place and it's all done properly. On the Pico, I needed to put it in myself. Yeah, and I would just add for my sister and her clay research. Okay, so my sister has to get clay from beaches and places like that, and sometimes they give her official permission, and sometimes they don't. Or rather, it's legal, but it's grey, as people don't really like you digging up the beach, despite it being technically legal. So guess who she sends to go to these grey area places to procure aforementioned clay from the beaches and cliffs? Usually me and a certain fluffy research assistant go. I use engaged ballast for my HO trains because it's actually closer to scale HO ballast. Yes. But you can buy proper engaged scale ballast. But it is basically, this is what I found, it is basically dust. Sonic Canary, clay bother is a great slur for geotechnical engineers. Trust me, I do far worse. Say far worse. She's my big sister. I have to. It's in the job description. Enjoy the French F1. Hyper perspective. Remember when I had to spend $500 for each for 10 reference books I really needed when writing my master's degree about Denmark's Arctic policy of 2020s? Looks like it's sunk hard now. Thanks, Russia. Yeah, life happens. Sean Courtney, never search HO Airport on the YouTubes. The need for one will far outstrip the ability to pay for one after you see it. Yes, don't search that. Ton of reballast. I made a model village row running through it. There was ballast and model grass everywhere. There were bits of green on the carpet, making it look like a summer meadow. Oh. It's tempting stuff. At mid 20k, it should do. Because you're not carrying the level of armor you sort of used to. So you have actually more. You must remember again the amount of space the armor took up. This is the point people often forget with battleships. They go, "Oh, that's the same sized hull as this other ship, and this is a battleship versus a battle cruiser, and that ship is this and that." And you go, "Well, yes, that's all true. That's all true. Wonderful." But a battleship will be significantly denser than a battle cruiser because it will have a very thick amount of armor in it. What are you doing now?
Just leaving something so it doesn't get wet. It's only a peg bag. It's not going to cause offence.
This is why I shouldn't leave my office door open. You just voice stuff into my office.
Sorry, glass skittles.
Huh?
Glass skittles, says the assistant.
Yeah. Oh. Bobertic, I like the fact the RN lists the Queen of the class carrier's top speed is 28 knots plus. Be interesting to find out what the actual top speed is. 28 knots or faster. It's like, always be very careful with RN listing of ship speeds. If they're listing it as X knots plus, the odds are the plus is doing a lot of work. Because the RN that wouldn't be putting it as 28.5 knots and putting that as 28 knots plus. Don Giovanni, I received notifications for all your Drax videos except your shorts. That's good. That's working well. The shorts, I have to admit, are an interesting thing because they really do cram on the views, and unlike it's the one area where I notice where they don't really they seem to keep up a consistent pace. They sort of drop down, and then it's roughly 100 to 120 a day viewing them. They do have their first surge, like this one today's got to 400 roughly already today, which is pretty good for being up for 8 hours roughly when I checked. But it'll calm down to roughly 100 to 150 views a day, and it'll just keep going on. Then, of course, yes, I've read Engines of War, and let's put it this way: my N-gauge train set is GWR focused. God's Wonderful Railway, of course. My OOHO gauge railway set is LNER LMS focused. I have one of those in the garage. Currently, it's not really able to be used, which is one of the reasons why I do the work I do with N-gauge, because as much as I love my HO and OO gauge, you need to have a dedicated space for it because it does take up so much space to have a decent line. And when I say decent line, I like bridges, I like tunnels, and I like various other things. So, for example, this railway, when it's built, will have a tunnel and will have a bridge. Will have we'll have a couple of bridges and we'll have a tunnel because I like those things. Because it's nice to have something like that. We'll get to some books in a second. Z gauge is 1 to 220, N scale is 1 to 160. Thank you, John Sykes. I couldn't remember off the top of my head. It sounded about right, but also sounded wrong for some reason. Yeah, we're not. Assassin's Creed, we're not going to get into it. It just sounds very, very OTT on its ship designs. Hi, Trisvan. Oh, goose or duck or swan hit it. Ouch. That's right. I know it was Kato from my deal in Japan. It's just in trouble at the moment due to lack of economical delivery service. I can understand that one. That's good. You would presume that, but I happen to know that particular store quite well because I may or may not have gone to school with the gentleman who now runs the store, and because he's taken over from his dad, and yeah, see, after he's retired from actually being a banker at about 30. Well, same age as me. Anyway, but no, it's they own the store outright, and yeah, we'll not get into it. They're an interesting store. I honestly don't frequent there unless I have to. Unless I absolutely have to buy something immediately to get it working. I've got my cousins come around, I need to entertain them, and something's gone wrong, and I can't fix it, and therefore I need to go and get one immediately. Then I go there, and every time it's an arm and a leg. I don't know, do you get paid for your clandestine beach operations? Not really. Yeah, now we need 1 hour video about testing sound from Normandy beaches on from for D-Day on site. So, if I was going to do that, I would have to take my sister on with me. Basically, that's the rule. I think I have a new member, but I haven't got to the point where it's saying that. Anna Tanef, thank you for joining. Um. ah. Something like seen N3 class. How thick would the armor on those BMFBs? Basically, the N3 class are pretty much planned to be armor. Honestly, me and Drak have a running joke about the N3 is that what they were going to do was cast a giant, roughly 100,000 ton lump of armor and then mill out the space for the engines from the armor. We decided that might actually be easier than constructing a hull by traditional means. Andrew, there was an interesting discussion in my local geopolitics group a few days back about just what sort of role large passenger ships can serve in potential future conflict. My point was that they would either be doing large zebra ships, hover ships, or very rarely, assuming airlift was an option, or was not efficient, as large troop ships. The only large passenger vessel capable of using a troop shape today would be RMS QM2 due to a speed. What are your thoughts on the discussion? Pretty much that's it, because the modern passenger ships are just not as easy to convert or as fast as the ships were in the 1920s and 1930s. So the role they did in the World War II is pretty much out. But yeah. Interesting. The beach teams who were doing the sampling for D-Day were Royal Marine, Royal Navy, and I think some Army gentlemen were sent ashore to collect samples at various points. I think there might have been an Army officer involved at one point. I know definitely Royal Marines and Royal Navy were involved, but I think there was also a Royal Engineer who went, but I might be wrong. Then look, you need a second camera for your sister, Syscam. That could catch on. Oh, don't joke about that. We now have, well, we have security cameras, as I've mentioned before, because we had so many people trying to break in. So I set up a security camera system as part of the security upgrades of the house. This was a few summers ago when COVID was when COVID first came. That's someone that happened. Anyway, there is a camera which is literally labeled on system as Sistor. And when I saw Sistor, all one word. And she hates it. There is also Mozart's Meander, which is named for our previous poodle. Oh, thank you for the super chat. Again, haven't quite got that far down on chat. I'll be getting some books out soon. I got two brand new books which are pretty cool and you're going to like seeing. Seriously, you really need a model of HMS Nelson on top shelf. There are going to be books all the way up onto the top shelf. There are going to be some models sitting around, and I have even considered that it's going to sound strange, but my railway, instead of necessarily having space in the center for buildings, it will probably have a station and tunnel, and will definitely have some form of bridges, etc., roads. But it might be the space in the middle is just designated, instead of putting buildings and building a little town or something, there will actually just be ships. I'm not sure how I'd fit that in there and make it fit with the model without it looking weird, though, because I don't think I could build a port in the middle. You can't really build a port in the middle of your model. John Shanks, bag ships. When a ship exceeds a hull speed of about 33 knots for our class, the power required to drive a ship goes up to about half the cube of the HP. Yes. Basically, if you want to go much faster than 33, 36 knots, you're looking at a nuclear reactor. Honestly, how are you going to do it? Only way you can generate the power with space within the space requirements to be efficient for the hull these days. Yes, I do watch out for the FB marketplace. And actually, there's an entire N-gauge model on there, which is not too dissimilar to that which I'm planning on building. And I'm looking at it going, ooh, that's pre-built, but it's not got a twin track round. It's only got a single track, and I want a twin track because I want to have trains crossing each other. Well, look, Dossie, ever since HMS Rodney gave chase to Bismarck, I suggest that it is desirable for Iron capital ships have the same margin error as she did over her official speed. Yeah, one of the interesting things when you start looking into Nelson and Rodney is you realize how frigging close if they'd had they built them for 33,500 tons and they're limited to 35,000 tons by the treaty. If the treaty allowance had been a few thousand ton more, I'm not even talking full 40,000 tons, I'm talking 37,000 tons, which is not beyond the realms of possibility. The likelihood is you end up with ships which have the same armor, same gun layout, same guns, but probably have a spec speed of 28 to 29 knots. So A, you can imagine how fast they'd have actually got up to, but B, You can imagine how capable those ships would have been. They would have been the first true fast battleships. And it would have been really interesting to see how they would have impacted the world, because they enter service, that would have changed things immediately, because that would have made all their predecessors, and Nelson and Rodney would have come into service, and it would have suddenly made all their predecessors look like, eh? And that would have been a moment, especially with the treaties, because it meant no one could build anything to counter them. Oh, one thing I remember. I now have Kofi. Now, what do I mean by Kofi? Well, as you all know, and especially if you watched the Long Patrol videos and before I get into the books, you'll know that I am technically now unemployed because of the way contract lecturing works. So technically, I do not have my university contracts run out, and they don't get renewed till October. So technically, no contract. So technically unemployed. And I've said thank you, because frankly, usually I worry about this period. Now, thanks to the support of YouTube, etc., that I don't have to worry about that so much. I have this level of support coming in, so I can concentrate on research and do the job applications for the permanent post, but otherwise I can just get on with history. I don't need to worry about finding something immediately emergency now to keep me going. And if there's sort of in case of bills, etc., because of, again, the way to pay you. Joys of academic life. Anyway, because I was working on that, and because Garius, aka Gareth, aka John Ball, lovely guy, superstar, and really nice guy, kept talking about Kofi while I was while we were in Canada and checking out since. So I've set up Kofi. The reason is you can do one-off donations through there, and I've literally set it at the price of a couple of bottles of Iron Brew. But no, I worked out that thanks to Patreon, especially, but thanks to the super chats and YouTube's advertising and the revenue I get from that, as long as I have over a certain number of subscribers, etc., and all the other support I get from you, it's made life so much easier. And I've noticed that actually the amount of history stuff I'm producing, not just in terms of videos, but in terms of writing, is starting to climb steadily as I get more confident that I don't need to worry about everything the whole time. So thank you. You've made a massive difference to my life. I just felt I should say thank you. Anyway. Right. That's good. I think the big cruise ships wouldn't be that useful on the world. The airlift capacity is available. The airlift capacity is available now. Whether the airlift capacity will be available once the war really gets going is another matter. I think depends how long the war lasts. And depends how willing airlines are to, and the banks which own most of the aircraft are to risk them. Hello, I can be 472. Thank you, Tanif. Nice one. Already suggested assistance can be a nuisance. Loki knocked my good USB mic off my desk. Had to haul one out of the music recording mics and buy a new interface. But I cannot hook my electric guitar in as well. That's nice. I have to say, one of the things on my list to buy, it's going to sound strange, is a dock for the laptop. And the reason I'm buying a dock for the laptop, so I can dock her, so I don't have to keep reconnecting and disconnecting everything every time when I take my laptop in and out. It just be one plug in and out. And I'll probably get that before I'll get the new computer up and running, because that'll just give this laptop a little bit longer and make it a little bit happier until I've got the thing ready for it. Answer, I think I literally have aliens doing mill out the interior thing on multi-megaton scale in a couple of books versus. If I remember correctly, you have aliens who build their battleships literally from asteroids. Glenn, so you definitely have that going on. Jogo, was the N3 going to have the same internal armor scheme as the G3? Pretty much, just thicker. Cody Idaho, thank you. With the Med, Black Sea, and Baltic being unsuitable for cruisers, are there any other bodies of water that don't like certain ship classes? Yeah, there are. It's one of those things, once you start getting into them, once you're dealing with the Pacific and you're dealing with, to an extent, the ranges of the Pacific and the ranges of the South Atlantic and North Atlantic, you start to get into areas which are very bad for small ships. One of the things that often people come to me and go, so why do you find it so funny that Ludendorff thought that they were tribal class destroyers coming towards him in the South Atlantic? And my response is, have you seen how big the waves are in the South Atlantic? The Royal Navy's only going to be sending down tribal class destroyers into the South Atlantic if they absolutely have to, and probably if they're escorting a convoy where they need numbers of ships. If in doubt, any ship that's going to be wandering around the South Atlantic not escorting a convoy is going to be a cruiser because of the size of waves. Now, that might mean you've got an Arethusa class coming at you. It might mean you have a Leander class, but it means it's very unlikely you're going to have a tribal class or anything smaller because the waves are quite so big. This is another thing which has caused ship sizes to basically evolve up, because we consider the ships that fought in the Falklands War in 1982 got absolutely hammered. The British don't want to see that happening to their ships again, which is one of the reasons why their ships are getting bigger. Okay, so there are a few designs going around for the N3 class. There are some interesting names for it, but the belt would be, it's listed as 13.5 to 15 inches thick. Probably an emphasis on the 15-inch. The deck would be between 6 and 8 inches thick. The barbettes 15 inches thick. The turrets between 10 and 18 inches thick. The conning tower 15 inch thick, and the bulkheads between 9 and 14 inches thick. Let's be honest, that is a ship which is basically going to be majoritively armor. And also, I am very certain if that ship gets up to 25 knots, I know it's supposed to get to 23 knots, but let's be honest, if it's like Rodney and Nelson, probably can get up to 25, 26 knots if they push. I'm not sure when you'd slow it down or stop it. Probably after it's carved its way through half of Europe, just trying to slow down. But were there any test guns that made for the N3 class? Their shell weight looked closer to the heavy US 16-inch than the Japanese 18-1 shell. That's an interesting point of contention, which me and Drac are planning on looking into. Hello, Cody. Oh, you've been around for 7 months. Thank you. Next thing we know, the good doctor will build a full dockyard and naval railway. That would require me having an N-gauge narrow railway added into the N-gauge railway. And if I was really going to be putting into scale, I'd probably have to make it... Oh, how would I get that to fit in scale? Interesting. Probably I might have to make that Z-gauge. There are ships on standard tracks. I could put. So I am considering putting in shelving and putting something on that wall rather than just what I was going to do was put paint pictures on there. It's going to get soundproofing added on it because again to help my sister out basically. Both of us are putting soundproofing extra on the internal wall on both sides because we're both quite loudspeakers and we're both lecturing at the same time. It gets quite cacophonous. The suitcase lady on Instagram has lovely setups that you should have a gander at for layout ideas. I do have a look at them, but the trouble is when I have a look at those suitcase layouts, I end up wanting a suitcase layout of my own, which are not cheap. Lovely, but not cheap. You can try going somewhere, but I spotted you moving and I've glued the foot to the floor. That's true. I've always wondered what John Toby's response to Rodney being thrown around like a tribal was. Couldn't you have got it faster? That's good. Planning and developing things about time the treaty collapse is what causes treaties to collapse. Others assume you're trying to collapse it. UK and RN, take care, that's good. You cut out your point halfway through though. Don't know. How much does the strength of the bow have to be increased rather than increase the speed? Or do you have to make ship pointier? Bit of both. Bit of both. And also depends on what kind of oceans you're trying to go through. If you're cutting through the Mediterranean at high speed, you can afford to extent to be lighter than you can if you're trying to cut through the South Atlantic at high speed. It's not that massive this year. It's only 840 millimeters across by 2,100 millimeters. So the space is 210 by 84 roughly. Thanks, Shrike. I like everyone buying my book. I know it's not perfect. I wish there are bits I would now, after reading it, I would like to go back and sort of change and modify. But I still think it's a good book. Okay, that's helpful. The mouse has decided to stop working. Let's just check the battery. It says it's still got half power. Hello, Melanie. Oh. I feel like the owners won't be given much of a day on whether the aircraft in jurisdiction are requested. And returning to my research on this tomorrow. In my experience, the aircraft the owners won't get much of a thing if depending on which jurisdiction those aircraft are in, though. And that's the thing about aircraft; they could be in a lot of different jurisdictions, and that can then cause its own issues. Actually, what is this theoretical ship? The theoretical ship is the N3, and yes, it does actually float. New IQB 4472. Wouldn't the government just tell the banks they'll let their airliners they own be used for military airlift? It depends. There are issues with that, remember? Who runs the banks? Then parts in World War Two, I think World War One ships that were just requisitioned, and I think World War ships were just requisitioned. Sorry, I think there were some powers to control use of planes in existing legislation. There are various Queen's orders. Let me see if I can find a list of them. Yeah, it's an order in council. So basically, if the Queen Privy Council can make an order in council which are done so under virtue of the royal prerogative, and they can assume control of certain things. It's drafted by the government, and so they have to be approved by the monarch. But it is a Queen's Order in Council for the UK. I think the US have various things under the National Security Act of 1960s. I want to say 1964, but I think that might be wrong. I don't know why I'm saying 1964. It could be because I spent so long today listening to "Will You Still Need Me? Will You Still Feed Me?" when I'm 64. Because my phone got stuck on that on the playing it. I'm still not quite sure how it got stuck. Quite disturbing it got stuck. I'm not going to be over getting stuck that soon. Hello, thanks. Ozark and Glenn are correctly discussing spreadsheets for organizing all their secondary characters' names and what they're doing. Sure, I've heard stories of US Enterprise receiving hitting 50 knots. Do you believe it? Because I'm still looking on Craigslist. That wouldn't surprise me. Enterprise had, if I remember correctly, 8 nuclear reactors. That's capable of providing a lot of power to the engines. Colin Cameron, I'm glad you liked that copy of Stafford. Colin Cameron, time to swap you to the mobile as I need to fix my motorbike so I can get to work tomorrow. Fixing the motorbike. I have a car which I need to fix. The wing mirror has been smashed. Now, parts. I think we tried to exercise our control over British registry ships and planes in World War II. I'll have to try and see if it worked when I'm in the National Archives next month. It did work quite well in World War II, but again, remember there's less space for them to go. And to be honest, airline industry in World War II in that period, 1930s, is very different than the airline industry today. For starters, aircraft spend a lot longer in the air today and a lot less time on the ground. So it's where are they? Mentioning World War I and World War II would have been King's orders. Yep. Hi there, Richards. Code 85, that's one of the films I don't like without F-18s. They forcibly put fuels for explosive combat zones. True. Well, basically, they all want to redevelop the Phantom, the Phoenix, and the combination of that sort of the missiles which came to the Phoenix. That was just such a useful weapon system, and the F-14 and the Phoenix was just such a useful combination for long range intercepts. And there is the fact that the it's one of the cute things of history and quirks of history that in the maritime sphere there were two beyond visual range fighter aircraft that were fully certified for beyond visual range in the early sort of around that sort of period. One of them was the Sea Harrier, one of them was the F-14. And the Sea Harrier became it after the Falklands War, when the Royal Navy basically got the budget to put whatever they wanted on the Sea Harrier, and what they wanted was a very big, powerful radar, and they got it. And if you've ever seen the Sea Harrier that comes out sort of the design process after the Falklands War, it's basically a radar with an aircraft attached. No, no politics. Powers for that under the prerogative are as opposed to statutory news to me. I have to look forward to it. We use statutory powers in World Wars, and believe it was in the Cold War plan too. No, I'm fairly sure they used the powers under prerogative. They had statutory powers as well, but the thing is, the statutory powers take longer to implement. So you put forward the prerogative, and then you implement the statutory powers. As a rule. So basically, the statutory powers are long-term ones, but it's to get it through quickly. You do the Queen's orders. Still eight reactors. It's not individually not that powerful compared to current days, but it's still 8 reactors. That's still a lot of power. BCH, I fixed my car yesterday by replacing it. That's probably efficient. Andrew Paul, depends. If she's running completely empty in a calm sea with a tailwind, she might get 50 knots. She does, especially if she has the space to build up to it. I said she might. She did have 8 reactors. There is a potential of it. Although I do have a friend who worked on Enterprise. When I say friend, former student, now friend. And basically, he used to say that the chemistry of those reactors was frigging fun. And basically, there is the fact that no two reactors ever have the same chemistry. They all have different ways they react. And so each reactor is pretty much its own individual thing. You have 8 of them on a ship. It's going to be fun coordinating them. I'm sure, which is why the Sea Harrier's nose is a very different shape. Yes. Enterprise might have done 50 knots, but my 121 to 5 scale remote control model of HMS Suffolk does a scale speed you need a Mach meter to measure. I got a bit over enthusiastic choosing motor size. Now that sounds cool, Tanef. But guy, could the Sea Harriers carry an Amaran still stuck aside on? They could carry Amaran. Thanks, Daniel. Go look it up. It'll be interesting to find out. But I'm fairly sure Queen's Order of Council was what went through. Those reactors are fun. Most people don't realize naval reactors use fuel which is higher UT-35 than what was used in bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Yes? Atakoloki, hello, former Yesnik. We was on a CGN. We had two reactors, D2Gs. Their reactor chemistry was pretty much the same regimen and range, just slightly out of phase from each other's. So that's pretty much is not the same as, but I know where you're going from. Yes, they know to. I think he worked on the Enterprise, and they were all eight were completely different. I'm fairly sure the newer ones, as they got newer, got better at producing ones which were closer to each other. Hence, they could go down to two. But yes, a slightly out of phase and slightly different regimes, so they're not perfectly alike, but close. But Enterprise reactor plants were special. Yeah, my student is a former what would I call him? I think it was a petty officer, not chief, but just level below chief petty officer on the reactors on Enterprise, and he's come over to UK to do his masters and do his degree studies because he looked at the cost of doing an engineering degree in the US and found his credits could transfer to a UK university and found it would be cheaper. And so he came over here with, I think at the time, his boyfriend, but I think now might be husband. I'm not 100% sure. He started he started being a student prior to COVID, and then COVID happened, and life has moved on in the last few years. Also, I have to remember with the big E2's reactors, they're built and rated under Admiral Rickover, who had them rated lower than they could produce to pad the safety margin. I'm reminded of the Iowa CO talking to Drac, who commented that every time he remembers their top speed achieved, he has to make an effort not to add a knot or two. The defense regulations and emergency regulations, and maybe W1 DORA regulations, are orders in council made under powers in statute. I'm just looking. Yeah, it's just easy to go from one plot to the other with just a quick look at the logs. Right then. So, as I caught up with the questions, finally, this is a very cool book, The Templars at War by Zvonek Gabrzik. And if you're interested in... Look, there are two groups of people who are going to really love this book. Okay? There are those people who are interested in Crusades and the Templars. They're going to love this book. They're going to love the history in it. There are also those people who are really into Space Marines. Now, why am I saying they're going to love it? Because if you like to build... If you have Templar Space Marines as your faction, you are going to like this book because it explains a lot of heraldry, a lot of imagery, a lot of the organization of the Templars as they were original. And if you are building your own custom Space Marine Templar chapter, which you might well want to do, or group, you could find a lot of very interesting stuff in here to produce. Now, look good. What you also find interesting is that let's see if I can find it again. There is somewhere in here. There is a full list of the chapters of the Knight Templars and their various shield patterns. So, you know, I'm in the process of transitioning my force from Templars to another group. As you all know, I have a policy of never having the same chapter as any one of my little cousins. So the moment one of them decides that they're going to do something, have a chapter in a new thing, I then go, right then, I'm going to be something different. The policy being that way it's always more fun, but also means that less likely to have, oh, is that yours or mine? Because I always know who it ends up belonging to. I'm watching you, little E. I know what happens. But no, it's got some really good pictures in it. Brothers received food and wine from the commander of provisions, who had to take care that all meals were distributed justly in equal amounts. At meals, the first to be called was the master sergeant, who would take the best for his master. Meat was divided in such a manner that a measure for 2 nights was sufficient for 2 poor men to be fed from the remains. The 2-night measure served 3 turcopoles, and 2 turcopoles measure was intended for 3 sergeants. 2 brothers received 5 measures of wine, 4 measures in fast. 2 turcopoles received 3 measures of wine and also 1 measure of oil. This indicates that the turcopoles received larger rations than the sergeants, which confirms how much the Templars appreciated them as warriors. If an alarm was raised during the march, the ones closest to the place of shouting would mount their battle horses, take up their shields and lances, and then calmly wait for further commands from the marshal. The others would ride to the marshal, awaiting his command. If the alarm was raised while they were in camp or at another overnight settlement, they were not allowed to leave the place without permission. When the alarm was raised from somewhere within the camp, the closest men were allowed to mount and take up their shields and lances, while all the others were supposed to go to the chapel tent where they would hear their orders. If, on the other hand, the alarm was raised somewhere outside the camp, no one was allowed to leave it without permission. Once the banner was out, everyone was supposed to follow it as fast as possible. On the battlefield, the brothers also followed very strict rules. Depending on the number of the Knights of the Order and their associates, the temple would form 1 or 2 squadrons. There is no exact information on how many knights went into a squadron or how it was filled. It will depend on the momentary ideas of the squadron commander. As this was not a tactical cavalry formation trained in joint maneuvers, they didn't have to fear that too great a size would make changing and retaining the formation difficult. A squadron was simply a temporary group of knights ready for battle under the command of the marshal, the master, country commander, or if they were absent, another official of the order.
The goal of creating such a squadron was merely to provide the commander with control over the knights and knights an opportunity to hear commands and see the banner. No one was allowed to lead the squadron and go to the next one, and in order to be allowed to mount a battle horse and pick up a shield or lance, a knight had to await orders. Once in file, the knights sat on battle horses, and in front of them stood the pages holding their lances, and at the back, other pages rode on the knights' spare battle horses. Waiting in the squadron, the knight was not allowed to turn his horse to fight or yell. A knight was allowed to ride out of the file in order to check whether his saddle and saddle blanket were well fixed, after which he was supposed to return in file to the file in silence. Still, he was not allowed to take up a shield and lance without permission. Every knight was allowed to put the wire cap on his head, but was not allowed to take it off without permission. Knights could not leave the file or start the assault without permission. Only if a Christian was attacked nearby and the brother decided that their help would be of use was the knight allowed to assist the one under attack and then again return the file quietly. Any disrespect to this rule or self-initiated assault was punished by the biggest offence a knight could imagine. They had to return to camp on foot with their armour and weapons confiscated. Before leading the temple brothers in assault, the marshal would take the banner of the order from the under marshal, who went under the command of the Turcopolar, unless the marshal decided to keep him by his own side. Then the marshal would select a group of 5 to 10 knights who were to be his bodyguards during the battle. If the marshal was killed, wounded, or otherwise prevented from leading the squadron during the assault, and the banner was lost, his position would be taken over by the commander of 10 knights from his escort. He would then deploy the reserve banner of the order, which he normally carried wrapped while riding next to the marshal to mark the point of gathering for the squadron. Under no circumstances was the banner to be lowered or its pole used as a weapon. Other knights attacked left and right of the marshal and his escort, while the marshal's bodyguard could not leave him under any circumstances. The other knights were allowed to attack the enemy everywhere around, always bearing in mind that they should stay close enough to be of help to the marshal's group and protect the banner. The commanders of any additional squadron temple behaved in the same manner. None of the officers leading the squadron assault, including all the commanders of 10 knights, were allowed to go to attack or leave the squadron without permission from the master or his replacement, even if their lives were in danger or if they were faced with the danger of being surrounded. Otherwise, they were punished and their monks' robes taken away. Very, very strict instructions. We do have some books today. Thanks. How complicated did the night operations aboard Enterprise, Saratoga, and late World War II actually were? Very complicated. Let's put it this way: you're doing stuff at night which you find difficult doing in the day, but you still do. At night, it's just made more complicated, much more complicated. How do I put this politely? There is way too much going on for them to manage it. They need to be lit up, which makes them a very easy target theoretically to hit during the night. They tried special lighting and various other things, didn't make it work, but eventually they needed a lot of light. The 40k Inquisitor game has left me with the urge to run an Ascension tier Dark Heresy game and temptation to acquire an Elder army. I had neither space, budget, time, nor artistic talent to acquire and paint an Elder armor, plus no one to play with. I don't know. I'm sure we can find something for you when you come over here. When I get back into 40k, I'm going to continue the Ultramarines and Grey Knights. Yeah, I'm buying a new codex. So I'm buying a new specific book because I haven't done this chapter in a long, long time. So I can get the painting right and I can get the decals right. I'm going to start off with, this is what I always do. Whenever I get a change army, I buy some more stuff so I can get used to painting the decals and everything on new equipment before I have to paint over old stuff. you've got to play 40k more often than once every 3 decades, Glenn. It's far more fun than that. And the old book. Burma Victory, 1944. Now, this is a cool book. This is basically, you know, their series. They do pictures, and they have lots of pictures, but it has also lots of good writing in it. Put together by John Diamond, and it's rare photographs from wartime archives. And it has some really cool pictures, both of the Japanese army in here. It has some interesting pictures of Gurkhas in here. Some interesting pictures of Chindits. Windigate. And it's a really cool book to read. It is really quite interesting because I have to say it is the forgotten army of World War II. The Burma army and what they were doing fighting the Japanese in Burma does get forgotten. It gets ignored a lot. And the fact is they had a huge battle in their hands. And it absorbed quite a large measure of the Japanese army's strength and focus fighting the British in Burma. It didn't just stop with the fall of Singapore. It basically, the British continued, the war continued on, the British continued fighting, and the Japanese continued fighting. The West African 3rd Brigade, which had been airlifted into Burma to reinforce the Chindits, late in their Kamang Muang campaign in June 1944, was ordered by Stilwell to have attached Chinese artillery to occupy Pinbor, 20 miles southwest of Muang, at the northern end of the railroad corridor. The corridor continued southwestward to Indore and then towards Mandalay. Allied capture of Indore would block a Japanese thrust northward to recapture Muang and Mintiakiana. The West African advance faltered against the Imperial Japanese Army's 53rd Division resistance near Sahor, between Muang and Pinbor. This set things Stilwell, dispatching the British 36th Division's lead brigade, which flew into Mintiakiana airhead in mid-July, and the 4th of August passed through the West African 3rd Brigade, breaking the stalemate and capturing Pinbor 27th of August after 3 days of combat. Despite monsoon rains, the 36th Division attacked Mohin between Pinbor and Malo on the 15th of October 1944 and captured after 2 days of fighting, with the assistance of attached Chinese artillery. Molu was attacked next and fell to the Allies on 31st October, British infantry and Chinese artillery continuing its advance onto Indore and Kafar, later on the Irrawaddy River on the 7th of December. 14th of October 1944, Roosevelt recalled Stilwell as CBI commander upon Chiang Kai-shek's demand. This followed a long-running feud which escalated over control of Lend-Lease supplies and Washington's desire to have Stilwell appointed field commander of all Chinese forces in China, following a major Japanese ground offensive to threatening advanced airfields of Major General Claire Chennault of 14th Air Force. Chiang refused Stilwell as China's field commander, and along with Stilwell's non-diplomatic style and hubris, the Generalissimo forced his recall. Ironically, Stilwell received his 4th star on the 1st of August, 2 days before Mintiakiana town fell to the Allies. The American CBI theater was divided into a China theater led by Lieutenant General Albert Weidemeyer and a Burma-India theater commanded by Lieutenant General Daniel Sultan, who now took over the NCAC command from the recalled Stilwell. The Chinese 38th Division's siege of Bamo began on 10th November 1944 and was resisted by 1,200 Imperial Japanese Army defenders. In bunkers and trenches, eerily to Mintiakiana, the Chinese 30th Division took the mountainous terrain between Bamo and Nakam. However, on 9th of December, on the IJA 56th Division counterattacked, enabling 1,000 Japanese Bamo defenders to escape the Chinese 38th Division siege lines. Sultan now ordered the new First Army to move on Nakam and the Burma Road. Ma's force was to cut the Burma Road south of Mongyu to trap the IJA 56th Division between the new First Army and the Y Force. It's a good book. Anuk, Burnwood campaign was a meat grind on both sides. Test the limits and logistics. Yep, you can say that again. What is? Oh, that's that from that. Yeah. Mr. Ryan, I think I might build another out either Tau or Squat army next. I got about 3k points in Primaris that are very confused as to their genius. Hey, it happens. And sure, I like Lord, but never really gone into the community, and well, it has a reputation in fans base that make me hesitant to try. I would say it's getting better. There are places where it's issues, but I would also say it's getting better, and I'd say, in my experience, there are certainly some interesting things there now. New 472. My spaceship Marines are a custom Black Shield who used to be Iron Warriors. Cool. Sure, I think, ironically, part of the reason it's forgotten is that Slim was such a competent professional. He was just an impossible counterattacks attempted and failed, but the army was never again humiliated like it was in 41 and 42. Yes, that is a problem. He's fairly decent in his job. Oh, the mouse has started working again. That's good. Hi, Polemus. Consider it. Have you had any impression that the 14th Army has got more of the recognition it deserves since Tom Moore's well-publicized fundraising a couple of years ago? No, I don't think that really changed that one that much, sadly. Don't feel like I need a new book. I nearly finished the one on town class cruises. Did you enjoy it? That's always the first thing I ask about people when they read books. Did they enjoy it? Oh, there are some good books out there these days. What are you trying to do? Hello. Excuse me. What are you trying to do? I think you're up to something. What are you up to? It's there are some fun books out there, some good new ones that have come out, especially recently. Thinking about particular, is that the one I was thinking of? Oh, yeah, please put them in there then. I didn't realise it was raining. I think he was also trying to watch what his sister was getting up to.
Oh, I've got an assistant, don't I?
You've got an assistant? You've got your own fluffy research assistant out with you? Oh, good. I enjoyed every book you've recommended so far. Your reputation is of a star state. That's good. That is good. Speaking of books I should recommend, and haven't got round to yet. Talking about scale models earlier, this book, I've been going back to it recently because I've been thinking about a certain railway. And it is for 1 to 250 and 1 to 200, 1 to 1200 scale. Which is a little bit.
I don't know what that is.
It's a mass of electronic cabling. Thank you. Wrapped around a screwdriver for some reason. Many, many screwdrivers. But the reason I bring this up is because someone did the description the other day. Shokaku wasn't the largest aircraft carrier ever sunk, and I was sort of going, well, maybe, maybe not. But it reminded me of this, and also that if I'm going to start looking at doing what I hope to do at some point, which is actually do. I've got a mild plan to do kind of like what Drax done with Trafalgar and Jutland, etc., with his scale models, to put all my scale models and various things together I've got to try and do some of the carrier battles of the Mediterranean and some of the carrier battles of the Pacific in models. And basically, I'm going to have to do some work if I'm going to make them up to this standard, which is probably what I need to be for photography. Also going to need to sort out that 4K camera, but we'll leave that to one side. The Congo Mogami are also quite cool. And it does have in here, page 75. I think I've shown you all this book before. Jean Bat. They were fine where they were, but thank you for bringing them and put them in here. And yes, thank you. You're very helpful, if slightly distracting when I'm in the middle of talking about a book. Love you dearly. Thank you, sis. Please note, when I'm not doing a live, hasn't helped all day at all with moving stuff, has been busy doing other things. Quite rightly, she's got her own stuff to do. The moment I'm doing a live and talking all, suddenly very helpful moving stuff around. And then it goes, no, I don't want to be on camera. Then stop moving around when I'm on camera. Otherwise you're going to end up on camera one of these days just to prove that I'm not talking to myself. Oh, sisters. I'm not going to return the favour. I like my life. You need to sleep occasionally. And she knows that, frankly, I just won't bother. But good book if you're doing that sort of level of modelling. And her modifications have helpfully managed to knock a pile of books down. Yeah, just quickly rebuilding the balance of books, rebuilding the balance of power and stress that held them in place. Stay. Good books. What is the sister's fluffy research assistant? She has the assistant fluffy research assistant, as he now is. Yes, she has the corgi currently wandering around. And the poodle is literally hiding behind piles of books now to pretend he's not here. And what I love is she's reorganizing piles, and I had a pile set to go to my car, and that pile has now found itself into my door space. I'll sort it out. I will do.
Korea authorial team is getting into the medal of HMS Belfast. Cool. Madison, would Orsinski be the largest carrier ever sunk? I've been on Oskani post-submergence. I possibly largest ever sunk, but not sunk in battle. So that's an interesting debate. Definitely, probably possibly the largest one on bottom of the ocean. Okay. All right. Just wondering why my Twitter was going mad, and someone was tweeting me has copied me into a discussion of Operation Sea Lion. Yeah, that'll be fun. All right, let's get back to the questions and find out what there are. High concentration, what scale? 1 to 1200. Yeah. You should order the longest lead items first, Dr. C. There's a good model shop in Cornwall where I get my gun barrels. And the nicest way where I'm going to get this is a model shop I can think of in Cornwall, I'll be going down there myself when I'm down in Cornwall, beginning of September. We're going down for my mum's birthday. So we tend to wander down in that direction. My spouse will say, will you get a civil engineer to help you rail time it? No, I want it to actually be built. I don't want it to be engineered. I want it to be built. I'm just wrong. America, CV-68 is the largest carrier ever sunk. 82,500 tons for load. Sunk in how much? No. Yeah, probably. It is America. It always amazes me every time I remember it that they actually let America be sunk like that. Yeah. You'd think if there was one ship that America would not let be sunk, it'd be the one called America. They would find a way of preserving that and not sinking it themselves. Get the syscam going. If I get the camera upgrade I've got planned for when I've got the tower unit running, that will probably disturb her a bit because it's going to be one of those automatic things which wanders around to automatically whoever's speaking. So it will orientate itself straight away. It will just do a spin automatically to her. Must be longer than a year ago because I think I moved into this office about 18 months ago. I moved into this office. I think.
Because I know it's taken me that long to get around to painting it. But, in good news, the office is settled in place now, so broadly speaking, where I painted should stay painted. Not suddenly start revealing more of itself. Yeah, that's the other thing on the list to buy. Sort of that big list of things I've got to buy, that I'm going to buy includes an ORSpot or OBSpot. I mean, 4K camera, because it just seems sensible to finally upgrade this one to something which can do 60 frames per second happily, can do high definition, can deal with low light correction, can deal with streaming. Because this camera, I've had it pretty much since the beginning. It's a very nice little camera, but it's a very nice little camera, and it gets overwhelmed by what I'm doing now. And that causes issues with XSplit, because XSplit is dealing with the camera and going, hello, you're supposed to be able to do 60 frames per second, and this can do 60 frames per second, but it can't really do 60 frames per second, and it can do high definition and all these things, but it can't really do high definition because it can't really do it for what is now the streaming requirement. So it's a case of going, okay, fine. If I have this is fine for using with a laptop, but if I'm upgrading to the scenario that I'm going to be upgrading for, then the OSBot would seem sensible, and that comes with an dual omnidirectional microphone as well. So I'm going to see how the microphone is good on that, because if the microphone works on that, then that means I only have to worry about setting that up, and then I've got the microphone, etc., and everything else. But when I'm going wandering, that can be the stuff I take away with me, and the OSBot can stay with the PC and all be set up and be fine. That's also something less, one thing less I have to worry about packing up and taking away. No, but there's some region of 96 roof tiles for going up there, as well as the silver paint for going up on the ceiling to deal with sound issues. There is a whole load of padding, orange and blue stuff for going on the walls, soundproofing. As said, a docking station. It'll work. It'll work out. I have to admit, this is the first time I've had a graphics card saved in Amazon, which has still been there when I've gone back. Oh, that's what's dropped off. Well, yeah, we'll have to add that. Find that from a different seller. What color do I want? I want one of those. And I just want a single silicone pack, because I want that. Yeah. All right, sorted. This is the trouble when you pop into Amazon, you suddenly want the things you need to go. I know, technically it was the ex-USS America when it sunk. It was still the USS America. I'm still surprised the Americans let it be sunk, although they sunk it themselves. The crazy thing about America is all the live weapon tests over 25 days didn't sink her. They had to scuttle her at the end of it. Also, they are much upset over sinking her from the crew and public. I'm not surprised. And nicest way, sinking America, that's kind of the visuals which will... sinking America by America is kind of thing which is going to give you visuals which could lead to the rise of whole conspiracy theories. In the nicest way, that would be kind of like the Royal Navy using HMY Britannia in a Synkex. It just wouldn't happen. Or Ark Royal. Or Queen Elizabeth or Prince of Wales. They just won't get used that way. There are things which might get used in a Synkex. It won't be anything with one of those names. Illustrious, Invincible, they could have been used in a Synkex and it would have been fine. And problematic, but fine. Ocean, again, could have been used in a Synkex, fine. Albion, Bulwark, fine. Those names are fine. Ark Royal, Queen Elizabeth, Prince of Wales, Britannia. No, 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 no. No. Jeremy, wasn't your sister on camera earlier this week? I think she might have ended up on camera earlier this week. It's basically my ongoing threat to her. If she comes in here too many times while I'm talking on camera, she goes on camera. Never use Warspite in a Synkex. She'll sink you first. Again, there is a reason why there was no thought of using Warspite in a Synkex. They weren't quite sure how, but they were fairly certain they'd end up being the one sinking. It's kind of like using USS Enterprise, any Enterprise in a Synkex. Enterprise, Warspite still on the surface. You suddenly have been hit by every weapon you've fired. Yeah, she was during the outdoor stream. Yep. Okay, no modern politics. I'm not getting into modern politics. I'm just saying that, frankly, sinking a ship named after your state is a good way to start a conspiracy theory. I'm being good. Mm-hmm. Mr. Wars adjusted in. I've done that. It's amazing what having... Now, look. I will show you this. So, if I... Excuse me a second, as I move the camera. So, Fluffy Research Assistant. But also, pile of books. All protected down here while I was painting up there. So, I'm just deciding what books to get out and quickly chat to you about. And... Hello. You helping me pick out books? You are. Okay. What books do you fancy? There aren't any books up there. Okay. Fancy that one? No. Okay. Don't like that one. That one? Well, you looked at me then, so I presume that one it is. Right, as chosen by the Fluffy Research Assistant. We have The Walls of Justinian, which is by Michael Whitby, and is a very good book. Yes, and you want a reward for picking the book, don't you? Code phrase to confirm having sunk Queen Elizabeth in Synkex. London Bridge has fallen. I think the code phrase would be, if she sunk in Synkex, would be, oh, fudgicle. Because around, a warspite would just not sink. We filled the entire hull and superstructure ledge, and she won't go down. That's not a metaphor. She's literally a slotted block at this point. Ah. What sorting of books will you be using, Atto, when you put them back in place afterwards? Right then, the standard rule is there's going to be a bookshelf up there as well in this space. I'm going to buy probably actually Clarke system for here, 2-box Clarke, which is going to be the quick access books which I'm using for any current project. Then the books going underneath will be the major reference ones, which I need to be able to grab quite easily, but are too big for me to lift up, basically. The books at the top will be the very big books that I don't use that often, but want to be able to get hold of. Then the books in here will be structured with the ones I'm using more frequently will be over there to behind me, the ones which I find more fun to look at the covers of. It's my own system. I have librarian friends who threaten to come in and try and sort out my bookshelves on a regular basis. And I go, if you want to come here, you can come here. I will buy pizza. You can do it. But I am not. They will get reorganized back into that same organization system by me very quickly because that's the way I remember them. And the books move around. Don't know. I thought I might pick one of the Fairmount Model D NGV books. He does like the dog boats. Sean Price, didn't we refuse to build a Nimitz class USS United States for that kind of reasoning? Because they didn't want to risk it. Yeah. Yeah, there are issues with YouTube sometimes. It's a very nice system, but there are issues with it. There are issues. So, The Wars of Justinian, as picked by the Fluffy Research Assistant, by Michael Whitby, is a good book. Why did you pick this one again? It's a good book, but why did you pick this? Because there aren't many dogs in it. But there's chapter 4 is the 6th century army, which is quite cool. Thanks to the survival of the extensive contemporary narrative histories as well as imperial legislation, we are reasonably well informed about the nature and operation of Justinian's military forces. A contrast from the situation in the preceding century, when the evolution from the 4th century Roman armies that are known through Ammianus Marcellinus, the Notitia Dignitatum, and the Theodosian Code is unclear. That is not to say that there are no uncertainties or disagreements about some key matters. For example, the balance between types of horses, whether central versus local, infantry or cavalry, Roman as opposed to non-Roman, and about recruitment. There is a popular reception that Roman armies underwent an inexorable change from the infantry legions of the Republic and early Empire towards the heavy cavalry of the medieval world, the balance having already shifted by the 6th century. It's also believed local troops declined to the status of part-time soldier farmers and that non-Romans provided mostly effective troops. All these views will be questioned. There is an issue with terminology. Since Procopius and his successors as historians deliberately avoided technical language so that troops and units are often referred to by non-specific terms, such as stratorii or stratiotai, soldiers, rather than by the actual type of their unit, whether that was arithmos or meros. Furthermore, Procopius did not always record everything that he knew. Thus, in describing Narses' dispositions at Busta Galorum, he notes that 8,000 archers were placed on the wings, with 1,500 cavalry placed at an angle left wing. But he does not provide figures for the troops commanded by Narses and Valerian on the wings, or for the dismounted Lombards, Herulls, and other non-Romans in the centre, just as he recorded that 50 infantry had occupied a tactically important hill in advance of the battle. So for the battle, he provided numbers for the elements that would be important in the subsequent fighting, but not for the rest of the army. It is frustrating that Procopius could easily provide us more specific information, but we have to work with what we are given. Like you fight wars with what you have, not what you like to have, and battles with what you have available, you have to work with history from the sources you have, not the sources you wish to have. And the sources you have which are actually available to you when you're writing the history. And I say this as someone who has got a lot of plans of visiting various places hunting down more sources, and enjoyed his trip to Canada specifically for that thing. Hello, Sean Price. How are you doing? Sean Price, am I Sasha? I never got to be online with Dr. Sky live, and I got acknowledged. No worries. I usually say hello to. I try to say hello to everyone. Bath cam. It does get fun when I move the camera. This is why, again, I'm looking for the gimbal stabilized mobile camera, because then I can move things down a lot more easy without giving you all the shaky shake. Honorable, when it comes to Procopius, there is something very strange. He wrote extensively on Justinian regime reign, and apparently someone wrote a secret history under his name for some reason. Paints Justinian and Fedora as demons with detachable heads. How on earth does something like that get accepted by some historians? It's an imagery. It's an imagery. At Justinian's extension, the empire's armies were divided into between 5 major commands. The 2 Magistri Militarum Presentiles, whose troops were based in the vicinity of Constantinople, on either side of the Bosphorus, so that their commanders were in the presence of the emperor. 3 regional magistri for Illyricum, Thrace, and East Orients. In 528, the last of these commands, the Master Orients, was subdivided when a new magister was created for Armenia and Lancia in the northeast sector of the frontier from the Tigris headwaters to the Black Sea. The long walls of Constantinople were under the authority of the deputy, vicar of the European Presentilis, but Justinian found that this officer devoted most energy to competing with the vicar of the Praetorian prefect, who was responsible for civilian matters in the area, so that in 535 he allocated the combined duties to a praetor. In due course, reconquered lands in the west were placed under the magistracy for Africa, Italy, and Spain. The supernumerary title of Magister Militarum Vacans was used to give individuals increased authority for particular operations. The provinces under the authority of the regional magistrate were commanded by duces, which is where we get duke from. Duces literally is dukes. Dux is the individual, D-U-X. Duces is the group, and it's where we get the word duke from. So duke literally comes from Latin for commander or general. Through Egypt and some Central Anatolian provinces were under the command under a commissare militaris. Justinian's reorganization of the Armenian frontier resulted in a number of the dukes in the east being increased from 7 to 11, while new ones were created for Africa. The distribution of units under these commanders can be inferred to an extent from the Notia Digitatum in late 4th century official list that includes the locations of different types of military units throughout the empire. Its evidence is not straightforward, since the list underwent various updatings in the early 5th century. Also, even the latest version, they antedate Justinian by a century, during which time some new units were established, although most existing ones continue to operate. In particular, Justinian himself was responsible for creating several new units, often a result of successful campaigns in which prisoners were taken. For example, the Nimadai in Iustani, a unit of Berbers from Africa, which is recorded in Egypt, the Equides Pezzo Justinia, created from the former garrison of Ciceron, who served in Italy, the Pramae Felicis Iustiani, who are found in Africa, or the Iustiani Valendalae, who have fought the Persians in the 40s, all units were deployed at some remove from their point of origin. The Notia does, however, highlight the importance of the distinction between the central Palatine units and local provincial ones, and also gives a broad indication of how the troops under command of, say, the MM per Orientin were distributed in provinces and cities under command of his subordinate dukes. Oh, I'm not the only one who's there in Pook fighting system. It works. Oh, don't worry, Sean. Well, it's nice to have you here, then. Nighthawk Productions. Halo Attack. Sorry to not have been about for a while. Do you know whether or not the USNR and the French ever put their carrier strike wings up against each other in exercises, much like how the US got Vulcans up against the NORAD in the 60s? If so, do you know when one can look for results? Very curious how Buccaneers, Harrier, and French fared against USN carrier groups and vice versa. There are a few examples from the 60s and 70s. And I will say this, the Buccaneers proved absolutely evil as far as the USN were concerned. The Buccaneers did their usual trick of flying incredibly low. And it annoyed the US naval aviators no end in that they couldn't get a lock with their radars because they were flying so low. Cowards, sending the Warspite and the Singex to sink the Big E. They don't sink the Big E. The Warspite doesn't get sunk. Instead, both of them take on the world and become the dictatorship, the shit dictatorship. And categories of troops. The army of the 4th century had been divided into two broad categories: the comitatus, which were mobile forces that accompanied the emperors on campaign, and so might be switched from the Rhine frontier to the Euphrates, and garrison troops commanded by a duke and assigned to particular provinces or cities. Latter are most often referred to, at least by modern scholars, as limitai and limitaniae, though in the sources they are also called the burgherai, castrensianae, or the repenses. The commandancies enjoyed superior conditions, possibly because while visibility to ability to emperor could bring rewards for their distinguished service, the mobility this entailed was not necessarily popular, and the more static limitanae had great opportunities for securing local economic benefits. On occasions, units were moved from one category to the other, with limitanae becoming pseudo-commandances or commandances, losing their superior pay. Commandances losing their superior pay and materials, e.g. extra horses, although the switch was not always recorded with a formal change of title. This basic division of soldiers, stratiotai, persisted into the 6th century, although the commandances sometimes referred to the category from the registers that underpinned the recruitment can now be split into two categories: those who served in the prestile armies and were based near the capital, Palantir, and those commanded by the regional magistrate. The latter were no longer fully mobile, with the field of operation normally restricted to the region commanded by their magistrate. They might be stationed with limitanae, as when Justinian strengthened the Palmyra, and they regularly fought alongside the frontier troops. One important aspect of the limitanae is that part of their pay have been replaced by a grant of land, whose produce and revenues provided for the needs of the soldiers and their families. This, along with the fact that they did not enjoy the legal privileges of the commandances, has led to them being dismissed as no more than part-time second-class soldier farmers. In his secret history, Procopius claimed that Justinian devalued them by allowing the pay of those in the eastern frontier to fall into arrears by 4 or 5 years, and then forcing them to forgo their pay altogether when peace was made with the Persians, so he removed from them the very name of soldiers. The assertion of the secret history had to be treated with caution, and this evidence is open to other interpretations. Ownership of property did not make a soldier an amateur. Under Republic, ownership of property had been a key qualification for the privilege of serving in the armies that conquered the Mediterranean, and did not entail that the owner actually did all or even very much the work on his land. Even genuine farm workers could have some military value, as the mobilization of peasant militias in Luciania in 547 and Totila's actions to counter Roman success demonstrate. Procopius' critique of Justinian undoubtedly contains exaggerations, and it's possible that the produce from land allocation limite was intended to cover living expenses in peacetime, with payment only made for service away from their base. At any rate, It's clear that Justinian valued sufficiently to re-establish the deployment in Africa after the Vandal conquest with the allocation of lands to cultivate. Justinian's codes also incorporated the provision of the Theodosian Code relating to the training of Monter and Lemantii, which suggested that he expected them to be capable of fighting. The numerous sieges during the Persian Wars will have involved some Limitani in the defense of their cities, including their own families and property, often successfully. Later in the century, the 4th Parthian Legion, a unit of Lemantii stationed in Syria, according to the Notia, fought at the Battle of Solution, where one of its members distinguished himself for valor, and the unit stationed at Asmus on the Danube frontier was so impressive that an unsuccessful attempt was made to incorporate it into the mobile army. Finally, Egyptian evidence from the end of the 6th century reveals that the service in units of Lemantia was a hereditary privilege for which recruits were prepared to pay, so that Justinian had not destroyed their credibility. Since the fighting by the Limitani is assumed to be inferior, the co-location with them of the commandances has been taken as a sign that the quality of latter had also declined. However, the arrangements for the reconquered Africa reveal that Lemantii were envisaged as the front line of provincial defence, with the commandances being held in reserve to offer support where needed. This was how Roman frontiers had been defended for over 200 years, and for the strategy to work as well as it did under most circumstances, the frontline troops had to be good enough to hold up the enemy invasion, while the backup troops being assembled from regional bases also had to be effective. Another argument used to assert a decline in quality of Roman soldiers is the prominence of non-Roman troops in the narratives of warfare. This has contributed to a belief that these barbarians were the most effective units in the 6th century armies, and indeed came to constitute the bulk of Roman forces, with negative consequences for discipline, reliability, and ethos. In part, this is a question of context, since the expeditionary forces used to recover Africa and Italy were bound to contain significant elements that had been enrolled specifically for the mission, alongside contingents from the eastern armies that had been reassigned to the venture. The new units will undoubtedly have been recruited on the basis of quality as well as their specialist skills, since horse archery was prized as a tactical advantage over Gothic lancers. There will have been numerous Hunnic troops, and these were likely to be used prominently in battle. It's also possible that, just as in the Republic and early Empire, non-citizens units, auxilia, played important roles in battle and suffered heavier casualties than citizen legionaries. Generals in the 6th century placed non-Roman units in positions of particular danger. The traditional way to enlist non-Roman troops in the late antiquity was as federates. These functioned as ethnic units under leadership of their own chief and might range in size from a few hundred to a major warband of 10,000. For example, the Goths who followed the two Theodorics in the Balkans in the 470s, who in theory became Roman soldiers when their leader was granted the title of Magister Militum. Such foreign units continue to exist in the Justinianic armies, for example, the Huns and Lombards who served in Africa and Italy, although they are now termed Sumacoi, or allies. Procopius comments that the nature of the Federate service had changed so that anyone could be enrolled in these units, although he provides no further details. He records Romans as commanders of a Federate unit, which does not represent a change from earlier practice. At some point in the 6th century, the Federates were reorganized into their own Moira brigade under a Comes Fedoratorum, who is first securely attested in 546. It's an interesting read. You gonna pick another book, or are you just gonna try and escape? Because you won't escape. We've been over this. I have the power. How do you stop a dog running off if they keep chasing squirrels? Well, you could attach it to a table, but that will tend to get your computer to go that way fast. Because the dog is stronger than the table, aren't you? You are. And I love you for it. So, attach it to yourself. Hello, you coming here to remonstrate? What are you remonstrating over? Sean Bryce, YouTube won't let me send a super chat. Says card cannot be updated. Particularly weird since I use YouTube TV and they have my info on file. It happens. The American class were knee-jerk reactionism. Same reason we have a USS New York built with World Trade Center seals. Yeah. Look, you can never... People are always going to go for a method of trying to sell the Navy. And also, it does make ships which, frankly, cannot be cancelled. Let's be honest. Do you want to be the Congress which signs off on any budget which sees that particular LPD, USS New York, retired or scrapped? Not anytime soon. Don't know. Would a modern airborne radar be able to track a Buccaneer at low level? They'd be able to track it, yes. Engage is an interesting debate. Potentially. Probably. Theoretically. The floppy research assistant will escape, just not at the current point in time. Mm-hmm. Not at the current point in time.
But I'll keep trying. I will.
Sorry, couldn't resist. No, attaching a leash to yourself is not entirely effective measure. That could just be me. Yeah. Luckily, I weigh enough that he ain't gonna be taking me anywhere. I'm supposed to be about 90 kilograms. Supposed to be. I hover usually between when I'm at my fit points. When I'm fit and fully worked up and fully gymmed and fully, I usually wander between roughly 85 and 90 kilograms. At the moment, I'm roughly 102. So, yeah, he ain't moving me that fast. They try to chase Foxy, but he fails with Foxy. He tries to chase squirrels, and he fails with those as well. He weighs... Well, your brother's about 20 kilograms, and you're roughly 40, I think. I'm not quite sure. I should probably know that, shouldn't I? But, you know, as a rule, poodles are pretty good at keeping their weight. Yeah, this, believe it or not, is called a standard poodle. This size is the standard poodle. He doesn't like being called standard anything. He feels he is exceptional in all forms. And his preferred thing from McDonald's is not the chicken nuggets. She isn't that big a fan on the chicken nuggets. He likes the reindeer treats, they're called in the UK, aka the carrot sticks. We do wonder about you, don't we? We do. You would have more interest in rabbit food than I do. I think someone's playing music in their garden. I can hear that. It's a pleasure, Sean. Well, I said he's a standard. No, Richard, you've been given funds to take a mere civilians and go find, film a wreck. That's going to be undiscovered. What ship do you go for? Oh, I'm probably hunting down the nearest tribal I can find. Probably trying to hunt down Cossack. Honestly, that's where I'd be looking for. There are standard poodles, and then there are miniatures, and then there are toys. And in Europe, there are giants as well, but in the UK, we just call them standards. So in Europe, you would be called a giant, wouldn't you? You would be. You'd be called a giant. But in the UK, they're just called standards. And most of our standards are quite big in the UK. So I think that's why we don't have giant and standard in the UK, because most of our standards would probably fit in the category of giant. Well, I think it's also to the extent he, like his papa, enjoys things sort of orange. Although we don't allow him to drink iron brew too often. Ah. Don't worry, they're all puppies and kittens. Sean, they're all puppies and kittens. They are. It's one of the joys of having. They are lovely. Sure, are they rescues or from breeders? In our case, they're from breeders, because it's going to sound strange. In the case of poodles like Raleigh and the Fluffy Research Assistant, he's a party poodle, which basically means he's the original type of poodle with dual colours. There is the Party Poodle Club, which pretty much every single party poodle in the UK is registered to. And they act both as the rescue and rehomers of anyone which gets into trouble, and as the breeders for them, because they're not registered by recognised by the Kennel Club, which believes you to be a pure poodle, you have to be one colour or another, because that's what they bred them for. Whereas previously they were multicoloured dogs, and so yeah, in his case he came from a breeder. We've had him sent from a puppy. Yes, he's a party poodle. If you look him up, you'll find that there are party poodles, and technically, the Fluffy Research Assistant, rather, is a tuxedo party poodle, so he's always ready for a formal occasion. There are also phantom party poodles, and which his mummy is from memory, and there's another type as well, but I can't remember off the top of my head. Are the standard poodles the ones bred as carriage dogs to attack robbers? Standard poodles were the ones which were originally used as the original sheep, wolf in sheep's clothing, hence their wool. So they do blend in with sheep. So suddenly there'd be a sheep in the middle of a flock of sheep, which was growling and had sharp, bitey teeth if any wolf showed up, which was kind of not fun. Then they were used. We have examples of them being used as Roman war dogs, and then they sort of wander around. Their use of various things. They're a fairly stable breed for several hundred years, and it's only really that the most of the issues that have come with poodles have cropped up since the Kennel Club movement decided that they wanted purity of colour to represent purity of poodle, which is a absurd idea and the only thing that's really been changed in their breeding in hundreds of years. Yep, you can look up a phantom party poodle. In fact, I will look it up for you and get you a picture. I love the Party Poodle Club. They're really nice. In fact, I'll stick a link to them in the chat, in the thing. And let's see, can I find that picture? Let's see, can I find... Ooh. Now I'm going to show you a picture which is going to make you all a bit interested in them. But yeah, let's see, find the picture, audio, image file. It's always fun when you do this and you just go, hope it works. This is the 2018 group photo. And yeah. And if you look carefully in that, you can see you can actually see where Raleigh is, the Fluffy Research Assistant is. This was from a few years ago, of course. And this is the 2019 one coming up now. There you go. And I think you can just about pick out me in that picture. And again, with the Fluffy Research Assistant. He was having a lot of fun that day. He really was. Ba-da-dum. And if you look here, you can see the Phantom ones and all the other party poodles. The Party Poodle Club is a cool group. And it's run by some really fun people. Richards, if the first name in your organization is Party, I mean, come on, it's good. This is not the entire club. This was the who could come together to the picnic. They have picnics every year where they have a dog show and various other things. In this picture, if you look carefully, you can see the Fluffy Research Assistant. You can see me holding him. I think my mum and sister are there. My mum and sister are there as well. And you can see everyone else and all dogs. This is basically quite a lot of his siblings were there as well. Yeah. I'm looking out there, actually. I'm looking for his mum and his brother, who are there somewhere. His mum and his brother are there. Because, well, definitely. Yeah. The grey ones are called ghosts, I think. There are phantoms, ghosts, and yeah. They're all sorts. They're really quite cool. we won't get into the Kennel Club. Me and I'm not their greatest fan. Yes, they're basically, it's a furry family reunion with their assistant, with their servants tagged along. That has always been the way. Always been the way. And probably always will be. All right. Oh. Now, I'm going to give a heads up because next Sunday there won't be a live because it's, if I'm not mistaken, next Sunday is the 31st of July, and I'm going to be away setting up a centre for a load of teenagers to come along for summer school. So there won't be a live next Sunday or that week. There will be, though, the first week of the specials. Starting off on the Sunday and going for the rest of the week, there will be the usual Tuesday video, the usual Friday video, but interspersed between them will be a series of 6 videos. So, and then, so next live, there'll be a live, basically there'll be a live on Thursday, on the 28th, and there'll be a live on the 7th. But there will not be a live on the 31st. Just putting that in while I remember. Well, technically, because it's called the Party Poodle Club, so I suppose, yes, technically that is part of it. It's the first word. They're nice people. That they are. Junior, I'll be down next Sunday. Heat stroke. Ah. I'm sorry that. I'll hear that, Glenn. Good luck to your brother's cat. Get out. Sorry. Fly. More getting it being party, not party. Hey! Party. It all works. Right. So, last questions, because what I'm going to be slightly naughty because I haven't finished packing up things outside yet, and I want to get it done before it gets too dark. So I'm going to say last questions, and I'll finish this for 9 o'clock, which is in about 15 minutes. So thank you very much, everyone who's been here, and I will see you again on Thursday. And I will make sure all the lives, etc., are scheduled in advance so everyone can see when they're going to be. But basically, August is going to go 1 week here, 1 week away, 1 week back, 1 week away, 1 week back. And then there's going to be September, which is going to be also fun. I'm doing all this work and then I'm not going to be here for a bit. Hello. Yes, you're coming with me for some of them, are you? Yes, you are. You'd like to come with me for all of it because you'd love to be. You think you should be there, don't you, to look after the teenagers? You just think they'd pat you the whole time. They probably would, but you do need to actually. They do actually need to go and do class and actually revise and do stuff with the lovely people of Justin Craig. Any luck on hood plans? I did actually find them, and then I forgot what I was supposed to be doing with them, so I put them back in. But I will find them. They're in a book down there, I think, from memory. Is Thursday the town class? Tuesday is the town class. Thursday is shipyards. That's what won the vote. So Thursday is going to be shipyards. And for everyone who's a patron, please do try and get in the topics you want for August by Thursday, because I will be starting the vote on Thursday, and it'll be running through the vote until I can sort that all out and get that all set up for the following Sunday. Because basically, I will be announcing what the lives will be for August, and there are only going to be two Thursday lives in August. On, if I remember correctly, hello. You're making sure you get between me and the mouse because you want to be given attention. Okay. Yes. You are cute. I do accept that you're cute. Yes, because the lives in August are going to be on the 11th and the 25th. Because I'm away the other 2 weeks. Rabbits are good for pets. I will get them to you. Maximum effective range. Oh, let's put it this way. When I was doing the whole analysis of guns and firing ranges, effective range they often considered for cruiser weapons, etc., was 18,000 yards. Destroyers 4.7 inch, usually they're talking about 14,000 yards, but they prefer to get closer and get really close. So usually you're talking probably 10,000 yards actually. Good luck, George Newman. I'm playing local host tour guide for a group of my cousins on Sunday, 7:30. All day. Presuming that's 30 for the 7th. I'm presuming that's the American way around it. Any news on the Type 83 article? It's being written by two perfectionists. It's getting there. Thank you, Anna and Paul. Thank you. See you next time. Thank you, Gavin Seaforce. You are being very, very fussy this evening. Do you want some food or something? Oh, you want your dinner. I should realise it's nearly 9 o'clock. It's nearly food time, isn't it? You suddenly wake up and going, the world, it's my oyster. Where's the food? You don't want oysters, do you, though? No. Right, and everyone. Thank you very much. We appear to have finished the questions. Everyone seems to be happy, so I'm going to say thank you very much and take care. Thank you very much for all your support. couldn't do anything without you, and thank you. It really makes it a lot easier. And thank you, Dick Richards, Tanavelka. Thank you, Jess P. Thank you, Melanie1640. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, George Newman, Glyn Stewart, Stafford, for doing an excellent job of adminning tonight. Thank you, Richards. Thank you, Niaku4472, Anuk. Thank you, John Shea, Sean Price. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Thank you, Darius Ratsky, Daniel Politics. Thank you. Calvin Gasberg, Seneca Nero. Thank you. Night Heron Productions. Thank you. And yeah, thank you, George Newman. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Basically, Yaku 4002. Thank you, Christopher Ryan. Thank you, everyone. Jemek. Thank you, Captain Seafort. Thank you. Thank you, Bug Guy 8829. Thank you, everyone. Take care, and thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Take care, everyone. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, John Sykes. And thank you, Grace Sarski. Thank you, everyone. Take care. Bye. Wrong one. Right one.